Number 10, Death of the Family. Written by Scott Snyder, released in 2013, we see the Joker make his return to Gotham City after having his face sliced off. Yeah, the doll maker gave him a facelift of a lifetime, literally, while he was in Arkham Asylum, but it was all part of a plan. Insert link, 25 seconds to 29, all part of the plan. So he busted out, steals his face back from the police, after of course killing several of them, threatens to murder the mayor, kills John Claridge, kidnaps Alfred, all while wearing the horrible reattached baloney Joker face, and then he ends up kidnapping all of the Bat family members. Ooh, so he makes Batman sit at this table with all of them, as it's revealed what's truly for dinner. They open it up and it's their own faces. Yeah, everybody had bags over their heads, and then underneath they were wrapped in bloody bandages, and then their faces were right there. It's a really horrible scene, but fear not, as this was only another cruel joke. Therapy not included. Wow. And before we continue on to number 9, guys, if you could go ahead and give this video a super thumbs up, that would be great, because it goes a long way for us over here. You're the best, thank you so much. If enough of you like this, they'll let me go home for the holidays. Okay, back to some Joker craziness. Number 9, Batman Endgame. Written by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo in 2014, Batman Endgame is not a time heist. No. It is a 6-issue miniseries where the Joker releases an airborne virus so that every citizen in Gotham turns into these mini Joker maniacs, running around, flipping cars, lighting shit on fire. But no tiki torches though, no tiki torches. I mean, they're not that bad, right? Yeah, you white people. Classic evil riot stuff, you know? Now that already sounds bad enough to make the list, but it gets worse. So the Joker also uses this virus to make the Justice League members try and kill Batman. Yeah, making your friends turn against you. That's the worst. So Batman had to use everything he has to fight off his powerful co-workers. And what I love about the Joker, slash what terrifies me the most about the Joker, is how he uses Batman's true identity against him. It's amazing that no matter how many times he does something like this, the stakes are always so high, and it makes you not want to stop reading. And it's resolved with both Batman and Joker having their memories wiped, but those images of Gotham citizens with those horrid smiles drawn across their face, that lives in your head rent-free. Number 8, Joker kills Randall. Okay, I gotta include this one. I mean, Joaquin Phoenix scooped an Oscar for his performance in the 2019 Joker movie, written and directed by comedic all-star Todd Phillips. So we have to talk about some of the crazy key scenes, specifically the way he kills Randall. Spoilers. So we have Arthur Fleck in his apartment. He's getting warm, he's getting his face ready before his big TV gig on the Franklin Murray Show later that night. And then he's joined by his former colleagues, Randall and Gary. So they question his face paint, obviously, by asking if he got a new job or maybe he's planning to go to the rally. And Arthur says, no, his mom died, so he's celebrating. I mean, that's one way of mourning, okay. So Randall asks a few questions about these recent crimes, so Arthur keeps the conversation going a little bit, stalling as he pulls out a knife. And then out of nowhere, he stabs and kills Randall. And the fact that Gary was there like the whole time made us believe nothing bad is gonna happen because Arthur likes Gary. Who doesn't like Gary? He's terrified of what he just saw. He asks Arthur immediately why he just did that. Do you watch the Murray Franklin Show? He responds, yeah, I'm gonna be on it tonight. This scene is just so chilling because he assures Gary so well that he can go free. He even pretends to like lunge at him as he walks by as like a joke. That's how comfortable he is around him. Dude's nuts. Number 7, torturing Tim Drake. I'll begin with how I peeled back the layers of the boy's mind. Joker says in the Batman Beyond Return of the Joker animated film created by Tim and Paul Dini. We see the Joker and Harley kidnap Robin. How did this happen? Well, Tim Drake was out one night patrolling the streets by himself, just getting it done, and then all of a sudden he has to save a lady from 2 thugs. No problem, 2 thugs? Easy. Turns out this was all a setup, classic Joker, and it worked. The Joker trapped him and took him to Arkham Asylum where he used shock therapy and serums, anything to break him down. He straight up tortured him for like weeks at a time. He was brainwashed until he eventually gave up all these secrets about Batman. And they end up turning him into a mini Joker, giving him the appropriate name of Joker Jr., little JJ.
Lost, Batman.
Number 6. His wife Iris West was killed by Zoom. Since the first appearance of Barry Allen in 1956, he's been paired up with Iris West, another DC power couple like Lois and Clark. They've been married and had all kinds of relationship drama. While she's attending a costume party dressed as Batgirl, Zoom waits for her in the kitchen, and when she comes to get a drink, he kills her. Using his speed powers to vibrate his hand at turbo speed, he passes his hand through her skull and does fatal damage to the molecules inside her brain. This causes instantaneous death, and the tragedy of it all is devastating for Barry. Later in the story, his true love is brought back to him through some time travel stuff and reincarnation, but it's still a seriously heart-wrenching moment for the Flash. Number 5. He killed a man. After the death of his first wife, Barry eventually met and fell in love with Fiona Webb, and the two dated on and off. She worked for a senator named Creed Phillips on his election campaign. When Creed is revealed to secretly be the villain Eradicator and later dies, Fiona and Barry realize through the whole ordeal that they really do love each other and decide that they're going to get married. On the day of the wedding, the Reverse Flash, Professor Zoom, shows up again and attacks Barry. The two race across the city fighting each other, but when Zoom switches his focus to Barry's fiancée, Flash goes into a rage and he runs up and grabs him by the neck from behind. Unfortunately, the sheer force of this alone snaps the villain's neck and kills him, and Barry is racked with guilt over having killed someone. The city even has him stand trial, and his longtime friend Wally testifies against him, saying Flash should have done more to stop Zoom without killing him. It's a real low point for Barry, and he's forced to flee to another time period. Number 4. His nephew Wally died. If suffering all this physical and emotional pain wasn't bad enough, Barry has also seen the death of his beloved nephew Wally West. Wally and his aunt are driving, racing to stop Iris's brother from killing the Flash. They end up getting in a car crash on the way, and not wearing seatbelts, the results of the crash are pretty brutal. Iris is left permanently paralyzed and Wally is thrown from the vehicle. Barry arrives to see Wally's lifeless body on the road and Iris being loaded into an ambulance. Flash blames himself for not being able to stop the accident, and the death of Wally sends him into a dark period of sadness and guilt. Number 3. Parents dead. Things weren't always this way. Maybe it was the success of Superman or Batman stories, but either way, when DC rewrote the Flash's backstory in Rebirth, they gave him the old cliche tragic past. In this new version of his history, his mother Nora is brutally murdered when he's a child. Not only that, his father is wrongfully sent to prison for the crime. And if that wasn't bad enough, his father dies in prison before he can be proved innocent, and the Flash goes through it all alone. It's only later in life that he learns it was the Reverse Flash, Professor Zoom, that murdered Nora and framed his father Henry for the crime to ruin Barry's life. Ironically, the plan backfires, and these events lead to Barry becoming a forensic scientist for the police and then later becoming the hero known as the Flash. Number 2. Returns to the past and allows his mother's death. Alright, we've seen a lot of stuff. How could it possibly be worse? Well, one time, Barry woke up in an alternate reality where his mother is still alive. In the Flashpoint universe, his mother is alive and his father was never framed for murder. It sounds great and Barry gets a nice touching reunion, but there's actually a bunch of other stuff in this universe that's different too. Like Bruce Wayne was killed instead of his parents. On top of that, in this universe, Wonder Woman and Aquaman have basically caused a huge war in Europe, causing massive destruction and devastation. Barry decides he needs to reset the timeline, even though it means losing his mother again. Barry does do the heroic thing in the end, and sacrifices his own happiness to put everything back to normal. Number 1. Sacrificed himself to save the multiverse. In the crossover event Crisis on Infinite Earths, Barry makes the ultimate sacrifice, his own life. The Anti-Monitor has constructed a giant antimatter cannon to destroy the various Earths, and Barry does what he has to do to stop it. He runs against the antimatter to destroy the weapon, running so fast he's going back through time, reliving his memories as his body disintegrates. The pain becomes so intense at one point that he cries out for help with nobody to hear him. He reminds himself that there is always hope, and he keeps pushing even as his body is breaking down completely. He leaves us with a final message that we must save the world, and Barry Allen dies a hero. This version of him anyway. Number 10. His fiancée had a nervous breakdown. Barry Allen has had a few love interests in his lifetime, and Fiona Webb is a prominent one. They fall in love after Iris West, and Barry eventually asks Fiona to marry him. However, when their special day finally comes around, old Professor Zoom shows up and ruins everything. He almost succeeds in killing Fiona. When Barry is busy fighting Zoom as the Flash, he fails to show up at the altar in time, and Fiona thinks he's a runaway groom. The horror and stress of it all sends her over the edge and she has a breakdown. She winds up getting committed to the hospital as her mental state deteriorates, and it's made even worse when Barry decides to come visit. See, he uses his speed powers to bypass hospital security to visit her, and he doesn't show up on the hospital videotapes, so they think she's crazy when she mentions that the Flash came to visit her. She winds up smashing herself in the face with a picture of Barry and getting carted off on a stretcher, presumably to a padded room. And that's only number 10, folks. The Flash really has a rough time. Hey guys, if you like these videos and you want to see some more, make sure you take a second and hit that like button. Number 9. He let crime run rampant in Central City. In 1987, DC released The Flash issue number 200, in which Wally has his secret identity revealed. He's pretty upset with the public's newfound knowledge of him because he knows the considerable danger this poses to his friends and his loved ones. He winds up taking an offer from Spectre to wipe the general public's memory of the Flash, including his own. In the final pages of this comic, we see the full ramifications of this decision. Wally and everyone else has completely forgotten the identity of the Flash, or whatever happened to him. This comic even explicitly states that the loss of the Flash caused a significant increase in the crime rates in Central City. Countless people suffer and possibly die without a hero patrolling the streets. It's a pretty grim look at things, but perhaps Wally regains his memory later in time? I don't really want to ruin anything for you guys. Let's keep on rolling. Number 8. His brother became a supervillain. Surely almost everybody knows Barry Allen, but there is another, Malcolm Allen. Barry has a secret twin brother who he originally thought died in birth. However, when these two come face to face, it was far from a happy reunion. Malcolm was secretly given to a family of abusive con artists with superpowers, and they constantly taunted him for being inferior while they raised him. Man, that is really messed up. Like, why would you adopt a kid and then just give him a hard time for not being good enough? Like, this is the kid that you picked. Anyway, by the time Malcolm tracks down Barry, he's pretty angry and envious of Barry's life, as you can imagine, and so he vows to kill Barry and everything he holds dear. His adoptive grandmother teaches him how to use the family superpowers, and so he reinvents himself as the supervillain Cobalt Blue. It's not the Flash's fault or anything, it's just another of the many hard knocks the Flash suffers throughout his life. Psychotic vengeful brother? Check. Number 7. Forced to fight his own grandson. How about psychotic vengeful grandson from the future? Also check. During the crossover called Blackest Night, the villain Necron reanimated dead DC characters with some black power rings and created a zombie army of Black Lanterns. Bart Allen is Barry's grandson, who recently died and was resurrected. Barry has temporarily become a Blue Lantern during this event, and he has to face off against his evil grandson. When the two do battle in a graveyard, Bart shows his resentment as he cruelly taunts Barry while the two of them fight. Barry tries to remove the black ring, but is interrupted by an undead version of Reverse Flash. Barry manages to connect with the living Bart beneath the surface by contacting him inside the Speed Force, and they have a really wholesome reunion. Barry owns up to his neglect as he guides Bart through the process of breaking free from the control of the ring. It's a really heartwarming moment.
Number 6. Joker kills the audience. This moment also mirrors what happened in the finale of the Todd Phillips Joker movie, so I gotta bring it up. It's like 2 birds, 1 stone, bam bam. So in Batman The Dark Knight Returns Part 2, Joker is invited on a talk show to get some insight behind his madness, which is always a great idea. Let's bring those people around. Ellen, like, hey, check under your seats, it's a knife. No. So stupid. After being asked by the host why he kills people, Joker explains how he's going to kill everybody in the room, and cue the panic laughs. What did he say? So Joker begins to explain that he thinks he's Batman's psychotic obsession. And then after asking about the lovely mugs that guests get to drink from on the show, the Joker then breaks the mug and then stabs Dr. Bartholomew in the neck, who was aiding Joker for this interview. Yeah, not so cured after all, I guess. And then if that wasn't bad enough, he then murdered the entire audience with a poisonous gas.
Adam is a patient.
Do guests get to keep these?
Sure, you do whatever you want with it. We got a closet full of them.
So similar in nature, yet I feel like this is worse. I don't know, like everyone else dying and getting poisoned, it's crazy. I also feel like Joaquin Phoenix is more awkward on a talk show than the Joker. I mean, watch any interview with him and you'll be like, no, for sure, definitely. Number 5, Emperor Joker. So this is a form of the Joker that is bigger and badder than ever. And it comes from Superman Emperor Joker back in 2000. And it was a 9-issue crossover event that shows what happens when the Joker steals the powers of Mr. Mxyzptlk, which is spelled so differently. I had to like write it in like, you know, a dictionary where it like breaks it down. Mr. Mxyzptlk. Yeah, he was supposed to get only 1% of his reality warping power, but he ended up tricking him into giving the Joker 99.9% power. Oops! So what happens when an imp from a 5th dimension accidentally makes Gotham's worst a god? Well, he eats China. That's a body count that's over 1 billion right there. I mean, the Joker transformed reality into this horrible version that better suited himself, where everybody's stuck in an awful loop. He kills Lex Luthor over and over again, and of course he makes Batman suffer death daily. Number 4, Harley Quinn. Making her first appearance in Batman Adventures issue 12, Harleen Quinzel, Adele Dazeem. Most commonly seen as the Joker's love life and twisted partner in crime, started off as an intern psychiatrist at Arkham Asylum. And then in the 1994 graphic novel, The Batman Adventures Mad Love, I don't know why I did that, Mad Love, we see Harleen's origin play out. So Dr. Harleen Frances Quinzel started to fall in love with the Madman as the days went by, because of course. It's an amazing graphic novel. It actually won the Eisner and Harvey Awards for Best Single Issue Comic of the Year. So if you haven't read it, check it out, it's great. She becomes intrigued with how the Joker's mind works, so she volunteers to help treat him. Now, after helping him escape numerous times, it's no surprise she became his sidekick, donning a jester suit of her own. And I like where they're going with Birds of Prey, giving her more of the spotlight rather than just this crazy sidekick to the Joker. And also, if I see any more of Jared Leto's Joker, I'm gonna bleach my eyes. That damaged tattoo on his forehead almost got the next spot on this list, I swear. Number 3, Barbara Gordon. This next one hurts me to talk about. Here we go. So The Killing Joke was brought to us by Alan Moore back in 1988, and since its debut, it's referred to as one of the best graphic novels ever published. Fair. So we have this background story for the Joker unfold as he torments the Gordon family, and then it comes down to a few knocks on the door that changes Barbara's life forever. So she thinks that it's Colleen arriving early, and then she goes over slowly, and then does that thing in horror movies, you know, where they open the door mid-conversation, not aware, and then they turn last second, and then bam! This happens.
Yeah, well, I had some really interesting nightmares.
The animated movie didn't get the same raving reviews as the novel, and most reviewers agree that the movie built up all this backstory for Barbara just to be a plot device for Bruce's story. Yeah, she gets sacrificed in order for Batman to grow. Like, nobody was ever doubting the Joker would do something like this. I mean, guy eats China. So fans almost write the first 30 minutes off of what's otherwise a pretty solid time, with the likes of Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill voicing this adaptation. Number 2, Beat Jason Todd. A Death in the Family, not to be confused with A Death of the Family, is a 4-part storyline written by Jim Starlin and published in 1988. Now, this was a huge moment in the Bat story because we see the Joker beat the second coming of Robin, Jason Todd, like to death. This actually came to life thanks to the producers allowing the readers to decide what happens next to the Boy Wonder. And they chose death. He beat him with a crowbar and then a bomb ended it all. Like the Joker used Jason's mother, he blackmailed her and then used her to get to Jason and then killed her off too. So dark. What's even crazier about this whole thing is that it was up to the fans to decide his fate. There was a 36-hour period from September 16th to 17th in 1988, and there was a number you could call in and vote if you wanted the Joker to kill Robin or not. That's like the weirdest reality show ever. Like dialing one number meant death, dialing the other meant survival. And it got really close too. It was almost like 50-50. God, I wish callers had to talk to somebody instead of just calling a number. That would be amazing. Yeah, hi. You know what? Death. I think, oh wait, no, death, for sure death. Thanks, awesome, sick, cheers. So one caller actually admitted to dialing the number numerous times just to put the nail in the coffin for the Boy Wonder. Yep, it worked. Hope you're happy. Hope you're 90 years old and also happy. And finally, number 1, killed Jim Gordon's wife. Yes, this next one takes place during the holidays, so how fitting and joyous. Making her first appearance in Batman 405, the Year One storyline, we find Sarah Essen, Lieutenant Gordon's partner. So after Gordon's divorce, the two of them started to date and eventually they got married. Classic detective stuff. This all sounds lovely so far, but then in Detective Comics 741, we find the Joker after he's kidnapped like dozens of babies. Like I'm talking, this guy kidnapped a bunch of babies and then decided to hide them right in the basement of the Gotham police station, which in my opinion is the worst place to hide anything ever. End of story. So Sarah hears over the radio, Joker has the babies at Central, and she's like, what the f? And then she gets out of there, and then we see him in there talking to one of these babies while he's holding it, saying sweet things, you know, like how life is the biggest joke of all. Sweet things like that. So Sarah makes a loud entrance, tells the Joker to freeze, and Joker tosses the baby at her like hot potato. He tosses an infant, and then Sarah catches the baby, thank God, but then Joker wishes her a Merry Christmas and delivers, bow, a fatal bullet. But the baby's okay, but Sarah, not okay.
Number 10, wanted by everyone, and not in a good way. In Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, Batman is a wanted man as in for illegal activities, or things that people are deeming illegal then. I mean, technically if you're a vigilante, it's all pretty illegal. He's wanted not just by the police as well, but also by the government. With Superman also now in the president's pocket, this also means that Bruce is up against one of his best friends, Kal-El, also one of the most powerful superheroes in DC Comics. So there's that. It seems in Dark Knight Returns everyone is against old man Batman, even at times himself. Of course, that is what makes the story so good. One of our favorite things to read about when it comes to Batman comics usually is how Batman must struggle against the odds and overcome not only the adversity of everyone against him, but at times himself, or his old age as well in this case. It's hard getting older every day. Slowly moving towards death. It's fine. Number 9 made a massive mistake. I mean, this had to have hurt Bruce's ego, I imagine, at the very least. Following Batman having his back broken by Bane, snapped over Bane's knee like some twig, Batman was forced into a temporary retirement while he recovered. Who should he choose for his replacement while he was gone? But none other than Jean-Paul Valley. While this was thought to be an odd choice at the time, considering, you know, he'd been training Robins to, you'd think, eventually take over for him when needed, he had his reasons, which he would later on even explain at length. However, it turned out that picking Azrael to step into his shoes wasn't necessarily the best choice, considering that being Batman basically turned Azrael crazy and sent him down a pretty dark path for a good amount of time afterward. When Bruce returned, he along with Nightwing and Robin, who was Tim Drake at the time, were forced to confront Azrael and make him surrender the cape and cowl. And before we move on to this next spot, just a quick reminder, if you love Batman as much as I love Batman, I said that weird, then you should give this video a thumbs up. Also, if you like when I sometimes forget what I'm saying and talk weird, I think we deserve multiple thumbs up for that, to be honest. Number 8, contingencies used against him. During the Tower of Babel story arc, Batman had his many contingency plans used against him when Ra's al Ghul managed to get his hands on them. The ones Ra's was particularly focused on here were those that would allow him to disable the Justice League. Batman had a backup plan ready should any member of the League go rogue, keeping a file on each of them and devising a failsafe involving their weaknesses being used against them. Ra's enacts all of Batman's contingencies, nearly killing the Justice League, and manages to distract Batman long enough by using his parents' corpses as bait. Although the Justice League did manage to win the day against Ra's, this also created a lot of tension between Batman and the rest of the team, and resulted in him being voted off. Said that like it was like Survivor. He's getting voted off the island. The Justice League island. I would watch actually Justice League of America if it was like a reality Survivor show. That'd be cool. Someone write that down. Number 7, Dick Grayson quits. A lot of the depictions of Dick Grayson moving from the role of Robin to Nightwing are awesome, and even show a sense of maturity and progression when it comes to the relationship that Dick and Bruce have. However, Dick leaving the Robin mantle hasn't always been the most peaceful of resignations.
To tell you.
But it was your place to put her in danger.
It wasn't like that. I volunteered.
You think you did. You don't know him like I do. He manipulates.
In fact, in the Batman animated series, Dick outright quits being Robin and resigns with a punch straight to Batman's face.
Things change. I changed. The game's over, Batman. I quit.
Robin, wait.
It was like the weakest punch ever. Gotta really throw your body into it. Calling Batman out for being underhanded and manipulative when it comes to how he treats his proteges.
Number 6. Attacked by his future self. Now what if Barry did battle against a psychotic, vengeful version of himself? This has also happened, and just another great example of the many struggles of the Flash. Not only does he deal with some super heavy-duty villains and storylines, but being a speedster, he's also constantly battling against the past and the future half of the time. In this storyline, we're introduced to a whole new future Barry. After a devastating accident that basically ruins his life, we meet future Barry. It's 20 years into the future, in fact. He's become really hardcore and a little bit unstable. We even see him throw a dude off of a roof and leave one villain to die after a fight. Worse, he discovers a rip in the Speed Force and decides the only way to set it right is to kill his younger self to repair the rip. He drags our Barry from his home and proceeds to beat him to death outside of the city. The young Barry doesn't even stand a chance against his older counterpart, who has been trained by the best in the DC universe. Just when the future Barry is about to break his neck, a future version of Wally West shows up and saves him. With the rip in the Speed Force getting worse, Wally winds up sacrificing himself in the end, and future Barry is left alone, having lost his nephew and sort of become evil. Number 5. He became the Black Flash. The Black Flash is the representation of death for anyone connected to the Speed Force. Once the Black Flash catches up with a speedster, they immediately die. It's like regular death, except it catches up with you a lot faster. When Barry Allen is chasing down the evil speedster Savitar, he reaches out to grab him, and to his surprise, the villain crumbles to dust the moment he is touched. Later, another speedster is turned to dust by Barry's touch, and he realizes he is to blame. Something is wrong with him. He and Wally later on discover that he's been turned into the Black Flash. As his mind and body are slowly taken over by the Black Flash entity, he does the only thing he can. He runs back to the Speed Force, where he was once trapped for years. Even Superman tries to get him to stop, but he fails, and Barry sacrifices himself to save everyone. Again. Number 4. He had to break out of prison. In The Flash number 164, we got to see the Flash kind of go buck wild in a prison and kick the snot out of some guards. It's not the usual scene for a superhero, but it was pretty neat. What's really wild is, we later learn that the guards are actually only trying to imprison the Flash because he is in a mirror dimension where he doesn't actually exist. In this world, anyone with superpowers is evil, so they obviously don't trust old Wally West. The thing that's wild about this is, Wally could have maybe tried to explain himself. I know the guards likely would have been having none of his crap and would have laid the beat down anyways, but isn't being a hero kinda about asking questions first and butt kicking second? I guess it depends on which superhero you ask. Anyways, whether you find it justifiable or not, Wally really puts the hurt on a whole bunch of guards in this comic, and I suspect he could have escaped without causing quite so much collateral damage. Number 3. He is sued for letting a woman burn. This one comes from 1989 in The Flash number 89. This story is focused around the limitations of the Flash's speed-based abilities. The Flash is actually in court in this issue, being sued for negligence in the case of a woman who tragically lost her legs in a building fire. Initially, readers are made to sympathize with the Flash because it's presumed that he just didn't see her or something. However, Flash later reveals that he feels like he did have enough time to look for her, and by focusing on other things, he left an innocent woman in a situation where she likely would have died. It's a pretty unique story where we see the weight and responsibility of a superhero's day-to-day decisions, and we also bear witness to the potential for tragedy that lies in every choice a superhero makes. Number 2. He messed with the space-time continuum. Dude, if there's any one takeaway from all this speedster stuff, not to mention decades of movies and stories about time travel, it's that you never mess with the time-space continuum. I'm not entirely sure how it works, but the one thing we all understand is you're not supposed to mess with it. In part 1 of this video, we mentioned how Barry's mother was murdered and his father was framed for it. Well, Barry Allen once tried to go back in time and save his mother, and it caused the entire Flashpoint event. It was an act with obviously good intentions, but man, the implications were seriously unsustainable. You think Barry would understand the potential for catastrophe in this kind of time-traveling nonsense, but he just gives it the old college try anyways. As you can imagine, it doesn't really work out the way Flash wanted in the end. Number 1. trapped Zoom in his worst memory. Leading up to the Flash number 200, published in 2003, Wally had been in battle against the insane speedster Zoom for the past few issues. Enlisting every speedster who would join, Wally borrowed their speed to aid him in his fight against Zoom. Despite this incredible newfound power, it's all Wally can do to keep up with Zoom as the two of them fight. In the midst of the battle, Zoom attacks Linda, Wally's wife at the time, releasing a sonic boom that injures her and ends the lives of babies in her womb. As you can imagine, Wally is really overcome with emotion because of this, and he gets a boost of rage and finally catches Zoom and finishes the battle. In the heat of the moment, he basically forces the villain through a rift in time, trapping him in an endless loop in a moment from the past. We see Zoom later trapped in a tube, endlessly reliving the worst moment of his life. So Nerd Squad,
Kicking off the list at number 10, the Flying Graysons. Of course, we have to start here, right at the beginning. When he was just 12 years old, Dick Grayson was a circus acrobat, and he was part of his family's act named the Flying Graysons of the Haley Circus. When they were on tour in Gotham City, Dick overheard crime lord Tony Zuko threaten the livelihood of the performers over extortion money. The owner refused, and then later that night, Dick had to watch his parents fall to their deaths due to a wire snap. So he grew up, of course, feeling responsible for his parents' death. Similar to Bruce Wayne's origin, this was just the beginning. And before we head over to number 9, guys, if you could go ahead and give us a thumbs up down below, because it helps out the channel so much, you have no idea. You guys are the best ever. Thank you so much for watching and being part of the team. Now back to number 9. Number 9, bullied. So following the tragic events of the Flying Graysons, Dick had to be sent away to a horrible juvenile service system due to the fact that social services were full. This wasn't a great place by any means. I mean, he was beaten up by other kids. I mean, talk about things going from bad to worse. First, he has to watch his parents die, and then he gets put in a place that he desperately tries to escape after not being there long at all. Poor kid. So during this first attempted getaway, he came across Batman, who talked to Dick and promised him that he wouldn't be there much longer. Now this turned out to be true, seeing as shortly after, he had a foster parent named Mr. Wayne, and he says they both have a lot in common. Number 8, Robin vs. Robin. Following Infinite Crisis, Brothers in Blood is a Nightwing storyline that's part of the 1 year later event. So Dick Grayson moves to New York, and then he sees another Nightwing is there, and he's taking care of criminals in a much more nasty, brutal way. I mean, like, much, much darker. So who could this be? The suited up Dick Grayson is then approached by the fake Nightwing, who turns out to be none other than Red Hood, Jason Todd. So of course they fight, and Dick Grayson is knocked off of a building, with Jason Todd of course preaching how much more the city of New York liked his take on the Nightwing mantle. You know, with shooting and stabbing New York's criminals, you know, rather than putting them in jail and not shooting or stabbing said criminals. So the pair ended up fighting again, and Jason Todd won again. The two ended up teaming together, but I mean, seeing Robin versus Robin, that's one we don't get sick of seeing. Number 7, got fired. Getting fired is the worst, especially if you're a super crime fighter, okay? This is war, Dick. Robin is my second, my lieutenant. Anything less than total devotion to this cause is simply wasting my time. I'll say it again, Dick. You're fired. Get out of my cave. And cue the dramatic music. The tribe has spoken. Get out of here. So Robin, aka Dick Grayson, came back as Nightwing in 1984 after he was fired from the role of Robin. See, initially Batman decided that he wasn't fitting for the role. So in Nightwing Year 1, Part 1 of 6, we see this unfold back at the cave, where Bruce delivers the 2 words that echoed in his head. You're fired. Well, as the issue says, one door closes and another one opens.
Number 6, fortune stolen. During one of the recent Batman events, Joker War, Batman had his entire fortune taken away from him. This obviously is a pretty intense blow to Bats and leaves him in not a great place. For Batman, a lot of what makes him Batman is his fortune, or at least that's kind of what we've been led to believe. In the end, Batman comes out of this stronger, realizing despite being widely thought of as an iconic lone wolf, that it's really his Bat family and his allies that make him strong. That, and you know, all the skills he's worked to hone throughout the years. However, even after the events of Joker War, Batman still does not reclaim his fortune, choosing to leave it instead with Lucius Fox, who he says has earned it for his years of loyalty and service, and who also deserves it just for well, everything he suffered in Joker War, let's be real. Lucius tells Bruce that he no longer wants to help him as Batman and says that if he wants to continue, basically he'll be going alone without even any financial support from Fox. This obviously changes a lot of what Batman should be capable of in the future and should also create even more challenges and adversity for him moving forward. Number 5. Omega beams to the face! Well, to the whole thing really. Not just to the face. Although this didn't end up actually killing Batman at the time, we thought it had, and it was pretty intense. Let's also acknowledge as well what came before the moment Darkseid let loose on those Omega beams. Batman ended up being taken and tortured by Darkseid, refusing to break before they had their face off. When they did, it was because Batman had the one weapon that was known to be capable of defeating Darkseid, a gun loaded with a lethal Radion bullet. He coolly explains to Darkseid why he's prepared to break his moral code and kill him before firing, knowing that Darkseid would definitely obliterate him with Omega beams, which he did, but not before Batman would be able to fire off that deadly shot, which he also did. While we thought the Omega beams had killed Batman, they actually sent him back to the past, but at the time, readers had thought they just witnessed a pretty gnarly Batman death. We won't talk about the past stuff because that's pretty weird, so we'll just leave that alone. Sweep that under the comic book rug. Number 4. Torture of Tim Drake. I've said it once and I'll say it again. If you want to hurt Batman, the best place to start is by hurting those that he cares for, especially considering how hard it is to actually hurt the Bat himself. He's literally spent years training his mind, his body, and his spirit to prevent anyone from being able to do so after all. Unfortunately, his proteges don't have as much experience, which tends to make them a little more vulnerable. Even the ones who are considered to have a mind to rival even Bruce's, like Tim Drake. Granted, the animated version of Tim Drake, which is the version here who suffered, was more of a combination of both Jason Todd and Tim Drake when it came to the character's personality and appearance. The animated version of Tim Drake ended up tortured non-stop for days on end after being kidnapped by Harley Quinn and the Joker. After they had gotten everything they wanted out of him, they didn't stop there either. The Joker and Harley then decided to brainwash him into becoming a mini Joker, rebranding Tim as their son, Joker Jr. It sounds adorable, but it's not. Number 3. Death of Spoiler. I don't think this one was just hard for Batman actually, but a lot of Batman fans out there besides, especially those who are also hardcore fans of New Robin, aka Spoiler, aka Stephanie Brown. Many fans hated how Stephanie went here, though fortunately since then we have seen Stephanie return and basically seen her history rewritten, so at least there is a little sense of redemption for a character there. Yay! Stephanie Brown as Spoiler was captured by Black Mask during the events of War Games, and was then tortured to the brink of her breaking point. While Black Mask's main aim was information, and a little fun I assume. He does tend to enjoy his torture sessions, cause he's completely crazy like that. This all happened because Stephanie attempted to initiate one of Batman's contingency plans involving Matches Malone during Batman's absence, not knowing that Malone was actually Batman himself. Oops. Stephanie managed to escape but was unable to bring herself to kill Black Mask despite all he'd done to her. In the end, Stephanie got away, but at the cost of her own life after Black Mask gained the upper hand, shot her in the back, and then pushed her down a flight of stairs before letting her go. She died as a result of her injuries, which I don't think is a surprise considering all that stuff that happened. I'm traumatized just thinking about it. Number 2. Loss of his family. For this point, we're moving over to Flashpoint Batman, who honestly I think has it even worse off than Bruce to start. In the Flashpoint continuity, it's Thomas, Bruce's father, who ends up as Batman after the death of his son Bruce, during an alleyway robbery gone wrong. That's right, it's Bruce that dies here instead of his parents. Not only that, but after Bruce's death, Thomas's wife Martha is driven insane by the loss of her son, not able to move past her son's death and recover. Instead, she ends up giving herself a Glasgow smile in response to a comment Thomas made about missing her smile. Aww. And goes on to become his nemesis, the Joker. When Martha learns of an alternate reality where Bruce lives on to become Batman, and where his one true nemesis is the person she herself has now become, she cannot live with herself and she takes her own life. The whole thing is pretty bleak, and Thomas has to do his best to deal with all this while trying to fight crime, make his Gotham better, and help Wally West to basically fix the universe. Number 1. Death of Damian Wayne. On part 1 of this list, we talked about the death of another Robin, Jason Jason Todd. And while all of Batman's Robins usually end up being like surrogate sons to Bruce, and I'm sure in his mind are all equal, I don't think he was ever prepared for his biological son to perish like Jason had. But maybe worse? I don't know. Honestly, dying in an even more twisty way, at least in my opinion, than Jason. Damian was killed by the Heretic after being caught up in a massive fight with Leviathan goons. The really tragic thing was that right before his death, the story also paid some tribute to Damian's growth, with him and Nightwing kind of sharing a brotherly moment before he is forced to face off with the Heretic and dies as a result. Oh yeah, also after he's like, I promised my dad I wouldn't kill anymore. Batman arrives too late to the scene where Damian already lays dead. The crazy part is the Heretic would turn out to be a clone of Damian, and this would all end up being part of a plot engineered by none other than Talia al Ghul, and more prominently, her father, Ra's.
Number 10. Robin the Vampire. Ever since I saw The Little Vampire with Jonathan Lipnicki, the Stuart Little kid,
Wow, it's great to be a vampire. We want to become humans, not eat them for dinner.
I've wanted to low-key be a vampire like every single day, whatever. But what if I told you that Robin turned into a vampire and it was all because of Batman? Yeah, we look now into the Batman and Robin Dracula trilogy, where Dick Grayson has become obsessed with killing Batman after he murdered his parents. Because, you know, the whole vampire thing. So he finds this Batman, literally half man, half bat, and he finds his crypt, and he just can't bring himself to kill Batman. He just can't do it. He's too much of a good person in there. So then Batman turns him into a vampire. Hey, if you can't beat him, join him. And before we go to number 9, if you guys could go ahead and toss this video a thumbs up down there, it would be great. It helps our channel out a lot. I'm in a closet right now. Like the video, it'll just do all good. It'll do wonders. Now back to this crazy list. Number 9, Bat Slapped. Okay, I'm gonna start this list off mostly with Dick's origin because it's quite crucial in some of these choices that he makes down the road, further on in this list. You kind of need to know that first. Following the tragic events of the Flying Graysons, Dick had to be sent away to a horrible juvenile service system due to the fact that social services were full. This wasn't an ideal home for a young child. He was beaten up by other kids, and it was just not a place you want to be, to say the least. So it didn't take long for him to try and of course make a break for it. So during this getaway, he came across Batman, who talked to Dick and promised him that he wouldn't be there much longer in that horrible living situation. This turned out to be very true, seeing as shortly after he had a foster parent named Mr. Wayne, who says they both have a lot in common. So his luck's turned around, how amazing. So Batman is also the same guy who kicked him out of said new home in World's Finest issue 153. The Bat Slap, here we go. As if getting slapped by Batman wasn't bad enough, Bruce actually wiped Dick's memory and then sent him back to an orphanage. All because Dick thought Batman was in the wrong for trying to kill Superman. So next time you want to remind Batman that killing is, you know, still a bad thing, you might just get slapped across the face for it. So be careful. Tread lightly, Boy Wonder. Even if it's an imagination story, you're still gonna get slapped. Number 8, Dick Grayson got fired. If you've ever been fired from a job, first of all, it happens. Grab a milkshake on the way home, reflect a little, brush it off, you'll be all right. But that's, you know, getting fired by Batman, that's an L. You've taken a big L. But if you get fired by Batman, like, you can't even put that on a resume. That's just a huge empty spot. You can't tell anyone. Says you did nothing for like 6 years. This is war, Dick. Robin is my second, my lieutenant. Anything less than total devotion to the cause is simply wasting my time. I'll say it again, you're fired. Oof, okay, Batman said that to me, my soul would crush. Every night I'd hear those words over and over in my head. Well, it all happens in Nightwing year 1. Bruce finds out that Dick has been working part-time for the Teen Titans, so he delivers that line, fires him, because he's not totally committed. I mean, that's fair, but also, I mean, I know Batman's got his system going on, but like, that's a pretty good route that he's on. I mean, luckily Dick went on to become Nightwing, and the two of them work it out eventually as time goes on, but I feel like we could have salvaged lots of time and heartache for this poor kid. Number 7, fought by Robin? Robin fighting another Robin. Things are bound to get a little messy. Following Infinite Crisis, Brothers in Blood is a Nightwing storyline that's part of the 1 year later event. So Dick Grayson moves to New York and then he sees there's a Nightwing there.
That's suspicious.
And he's taking care of criminals, but only in a much more brutal way. I mean, like much, much darker. So who is this? What's going on here? Well, the suited up Dick Grayson is then approached by the crazier Nightwing, who turns out to be none other than, you guessed it, Jason Todd. So of course they fight and Dick Grayson is knocked off the building, and with Jason Todd of course bragging the whole time of how he's the best fighter ever and how the city loves him so much more in the way he's doing things, you know, with shooting and stabbing people rather than slapping some handcuffs on them. So the pair ended up fighting again after this, and Jason Todd won again. They ended up teaming together, but falling off a building and fighting each other was a bad day for not only one Robin, but both of them. I also love how Jason suited up in an old costume to just deliver the point even harder.
Give it up, bro.
Number 6, he gets sent to an orphanage. So while I previously mentioned how Batman got Dick out of a hostile living situation with other kids, Batman is also the same guy who would kick him out in World's Finest issue 153. So although it's an imagination story, we still got to see the birth of a popular meme. The bat slap. As if getting slapped by Batman wasn't bad enough, Bruce actually wiped Dick's memory and sent him to an orphanage. All because Dick thought Batman was in the wrong for trying to kill Superman. See, sometimes taking the high road just gets you slapped. It's, it's part of the hero gig. Number 5, the helicopter crash. So in issue 147 of Nightwing, we see Harvey Two-Face Dent do a little good for Dick Grayson. So this is after Batman had apparently died. So Two-Face tips off Nightwing on a young woman named Carol Benjamin who needed help. So Nightwing swoops in to save the day. While trying to help her get to safety via a helicopter, bullets start to fly in from the darkness, and officers are being taken out left, right, and center. So while the helicopter is going down, Nightwing saves Carol right at the last second, but not without getting hurt during the process. Don't worry, that's not your blood, he says. It's mine. And there's quite a bit of blood. Number 4, shot by the Joker. Being the sidekick to Batman sounds like the greatest gig ever, but eventually I'm sure you want to go about your own way. So when he was just 17 years old, Dick Grayson was actually shot in the shoulder by the Joker. So Batman decided that would be a perfect time to end his crime-fighting days. Well, this might have been just the push that he needed, because that's when Dick donned this new Nightwing persona in the first place. He came back stronger and ready to go. All it took was a nice bullet in the shoulder to get things in motion. Number 3, shot again. So during the Batman War Games storyline, Act 3, Part 3, Dick is shot. Again, he actually gets shot quite a bit. Each, I imagine, gets more painful than the previous. I don't think that's a feeling you get used to, like tattoos, I don't know. So Gotham City is not a safe place at all during this storyline, obviously. Chaos has erupted with villains like Black Mask, Killer Croc, and Tarantula trying to bid control over the city. So there was an order from a new police commissioner to shoot anybody in costume. That includes Nightwing. So while he was scrapping it out with Firefly, a Gotham City police officer took his shot and nailed Nightwing right in the leg. Number 2, beaten up by Two-Face. The first year of any job can have its hiccups. For the boy Wonder, those hiccups left scars and bruises, evidently. So in Robin Year 1, Issue 2, we see Robin try and save Batman and the DA of Gotham. He gets restrained and he watches as Two-Face flips a coin to decide the DA's fate. But the deal, of course, is still a lose-lose. After cutting the DA free, they proceeded to fall into water and drown. And after that, he beats Robin to a pulp, all while Batman has to stand there tied up and watch the whole thing. And finally, number 1, shot in the head. Okay, we got bullets being fired into shoulders, legs, but this last one, it's gotta be the worst. It has to be the worst. We jump over now to Batman issue 55, where we see Nightwing and Batman patrolling Gotham City as usual. Nightwing playfully challenges Batman to a contest. Whoever jumps off the building and shoots their grapple gun first loses. It's kind of like a let's see who can get closest to the bottom. So Batman eventually agrees. They make the dive and Nightwing technically wins because Batman breaks early to attend the bat symbol. Still a win. I mean, we love games, right? Well, at the same time Nightwing and Batman were talking to Jim Gordon, KG Beast was taking aim at Nightwing's head. And then, bam, a bullet strikes Dick's head, and he wasn't the same afterwards. Fun grapple games, and then minutes later, serious brain trauma. The bad luck never ends with this guy. God.
Number 10, Death of Dee Dee. In the future state glimpse into Gotham City Sirens, we are introduced to a new member of the team in issue number 1 of the next Batman. For those who are unaware, actually, there are a slew of amazing extra stories that come in this comic, and pretty much all of them are good. While I would say that Gotham City Sirens is maybe the weakest of these, it's still a really good story, so that's not even like an insult to it. But there is a very tragic and heart-wrenching moment that might also infuriate you in this story. The newest member of the team is Dee Dee, an AI droid who was made in the future by a very shady businessman. Exposing Dee Dee's creator for his problematic practices could topple the magistrate's reign. So Catwoman and Poison Ivy bring her into the fold and team up with the AI, and they have like an awesome girls' night out, which is the whole plot, but anyways. However, after we get to know and love Dee Dee on this girls' night out, it's revealed that she is not destined to stay with the group, and in the end, She sacrifices herself to help Gotham and her new friends. Hopefully, if we get some future Gotham City Sirens stories, DC can somehow find a way to feature Dee Dee in those stories, like working alongside the team again. Or maybe if we go past this future, they'll be able to bring her back with her memory. Otherwise, I feel like I was duped into loving a neat new character who I'll just never see again. I hate that. I hate when people are like, look at this cool new character, and you're like, oh, is this gonna be oh no, they're dead. Okay, never mind. Cool. Number 9, Bat Cat reunited? How could this be a worse thing? I know you're thinking. Wouldn't that be good, Amanda? Well, because these two, it seems, were only brought back together to be ripped asunder once more. How tragic. My heart. Catwoman tells a story of Selina trying to pull off a train heist where she is looking to free the magistrate's captured criminals. In issue 1, while she found Automatopoeia, it was revealed that Talia al Ghul, also on the train, found Bruce Wayne. In issue number 2, Bruce manages to see that Selina is on the train via a monitor in security. Not only does he show up to help save the day, but then he and Selina also have a touching reunion. Always hair in my mouth. Honestly, if you're a fan of the Bat-Cat relationship, issue 2 of Catwoman is for you. You need to read it. There are a lot of great moments exploring what Bruce means to Selina. Despite being reunited, ultimately, Batman decides to split from Catwoman, knowing if they stay together, she'll forever be on the run and in danger. Even more so than usual, I guess. Can't you just be on the run together? Why you gotta split up? And friends, before we move on to this next spot, just a reminder, if you are enjoying DC Future State as much as us, or even if you're not enjoying it, give this video a thumbs up. We really love talking about it with you. And yeah, it also lets us know that you like when we talk about events and event adjacent things. Number 8, the question is... I hope you've clicked ahead if you didn't want this revealed, by the way, because I'm about to reveal who the question is. The question is... Deadman? Wait, what? I don't think this is actually the worst of the worst things to happen, but I just felt that it was kind of random. I mean, maybe there were clues and I missed them in Shazam issue 1 to lead me to this revelation. And if you loved this reveal, feel free to let me know in the comments below if you disagree with me, because hey, I didn't hate it, I just didn't love it, and I would love to hear about why people love it. In Shazam issue number 2, we learn of the question's true identity after it's already been established previously in Shazam that the identity of the question is a complete mystery. Ooh, we don't know who it is, who will it be? Which is usually a good time. I personally think I like when the question is super mysterious and we actually don't know who it is. I don't need a reveal. In fact, I would have even been cool for this to not be revealed in Future State. The true identity of the question could then be kept a mystery and it could unfold in maybe a new question series. I don't know. But hey, that's just me. Number 7, Billy gives up his life. In Shazam issue number 1, we learn of what happened to Shazam following him leaving the Teen Titans. He appears to have somehow gotten out of the Rock of Eternity, but Raven is nowhere to be seen. So, what happened? Well, it turns out Shazam made a deal to get free and act as a hero on Earth while Billy took his place as guard in the Rock of Eternity, having the spirit that was needed to do so, because it's Billy Batson. What does this mean? Billy basically gave up his whole life to protect the world, acting as a guardian while Shazam lives on Earth as a hero in this place. Now I put hero in quotes because, well, Shazam doesn't really end up acting so heroic without Billy there to kind of guide him. But that's a whole other story. I could do a whole separate point on that. Well, it's later revealed Billy doesn't end up stuck there forever. He was still there for who knows how long, and him even agreeing to act as guardian without Shazam, it turns out was an all-around really bad move. If we're better together, they're not so good if you separate them. Yikes.
Number 6, shot in the head. This one came out of nowhere, okay? So what started as a fun training exercise quickly turned into a very bad situation with Nightwing. So Batman issue 55, we see Nightwing and Batman patrolling Gotham City as usual. Nightwing playfully challenges Batman to a contest, spice up the patrol a little bit, keep it fresh. And at first Batman isn't really on board, but eventually he's like, all right, let's do this, Youngblood. The game is, whoever shoots their grapple first as they're falling loses. So you gotta see who can get closest to the ground. How low can you go? Gotham edition. So they make the dive and Nightwing technically wins. Because Batman breaks early to attend to the bat symbol. Rules are rules. He still did win. That's a win. But the fun and games end quite early. So at the same time Nightwing and Batman were talking to Jim Gordon, At this point, KG Beast was taking aim at Nightwing's head, and then just like that, the bullet grazes off Dick's head. And I don't mean graze like, oh, I think I got shot. I mean graze like it just didn't go through his head. That's the only difference. It got him good. So good that he wasn't the same afterwards. Fun grapple games and then minutes later, serious brain trauma. Sounds like a sidekick classic in the world of the Bat. Number 5, Tim Drake's torture. I'll begin with how I peeled back the layers of the boy's mind. Those are the very scary words of the Joker, and he says it in Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker animated film, created by Tim Gunn and Paul Dini. So we see the Joker and Harley kidnap Robin. Tim Drake was out one night patrolling the streets by himself, just doing what he does best, getting it done. Then, all of a sudden, he has to save a lady from 2 thugs. No problem. That's a cakewalk, or a walk in the park, or a walk in the cake, whatever you like to say. Turns out this was all a setup, and it worked perfectly. The Joker trapped him and then took him to Arkham Asylum, where he used shock therapy and serums, literally anything he could to break him. He tortured him for like 2 weeks straight. That's a long time. I've been working in his closet for 2 weeks. It's a very long time. I have a very good concept of how long time is in his closet. He was brainwashed until he eventually gave up all these secrets about Batman, but it gets even worse. Yeah, that's right. Joker ended up turning him into a mini Joker and gave him the appropriate name of JJ, Joker Jr.
You've lost, Batman.
Number 4, Stephanie Brown's death. So when Tim's father found out about his part-time gig as Robin, he was forced to retire. Meanwhile, Stephanie also broke it off with Tim Drake because she thought that he'd been sneaking around behind her back. She saw him talking to a girl at a locker and she was like, something looks weird here. A little bit of too much hip movements in the conversation. So she needed something else to focus on in her time. So she made a homemade Robin suit and snuck into the Batcave and demanded that Batman would make her the new Robin and train her. I like it. She's committed. Let's do it. So Batman's like, all right. He's like, yeah, let's do it. Let's party. So cut to several months of training, a new costume upgrade that matched the same design as Tim's costume. She's now rolling with B-Man. And the two worked well together. I mean, for a little while, because, you know, that's how these things go. Then she disobeyed orders on a couple of missions and was promptly also fired. No more suit. Get out of here. Beat it. Just like that. Like, this guy's ruthless. Now, this is where things, again, go from bad to worse. So because of this, Stephanie felt like she had to prove herself to Batman. Everybody's got to prove themselves and do crazy shit. So she took one of his plans for the Gotham underworld and tried to step up. This unfortunately led to the events of Batman War Games, where Stephanie was captured by Black Mask, she was tortured, and then sadly she died in a hospital with a regretful and failed Bruce Wayne by her side. Leslie Tompkins sure didn't help either. It was actually revealed that she had withheld a medical treatment that could have saved Stephanie. So in an attempt to make Bruce see the violence that he'd caused and hang up the mantle, she didn't give it to her. So dark. DC is so dark. She's like, you know what? I'm gonna let her die to teach you a lesson, because you haven't learned any lessons with death. You know? Yeah, you know, because Batman hasn't learned any lessons by people dying, for sure. He needed that lesson. He has no idea what that's like. Number 3, Damian Wayne's death. The 5th Robin in this list of Robins, Damian Wayne. Damian Wayne, he is the son of Batman and Talia al Ghul, which means he's now heir to both Batman, crime-fighting superhero, and also Ra's al Ghul's family, a not crime-fighting team. They're kind of the worst. That's a wild parent-teacher conference to have right there, first of all. So he worked alongside Dick Grayson, who at this point had replaced Batman, and he was perfect, like genetically speaking. His origin was unknown to Batman at this point. He was grown in this artificial womb, made to be a warrior by Talia in the League of Assassins. So he was already a well-established fighter when he was just a preteen. Wild. Talia had him spy on Bruce at first, and she actually left him with Bruce. Like, hey, you know, just trying to throw off his game. Like, hey, here's a kid, good luck. All the while, a cloned and older version of the Boy Wonder was made to cause chaos. Chaos that ended up impaling Damian and killing him instantly. But he put up an unreal fight. I mean, kicking the arrow through his back and then out of his chest, and then calling him a coward. Like, what a way to go out. Number 2, Jason Todd's death. So different than Dick Grayson, Jason Todd did the things the harder way. Like I just mentioned a couple times on this list, he had a pretty rough go, but nothing can be worse than the day of his death in A Death in the Family, written by Jim Starlin back in 1988. So we got to see the death of the second Robin, Jason Todd. So for starters, this was a choice that readers had to make back in the day. Yeah, you could straight up call a number and vote for if you wanted this dude to die. So hats off, you guys did it. Awesome, great work. Do you feel good? You should feel good. So Batman had actually asked Barbara Gordon to come out of retirement to keep an eye on him during a couple of missions. But she saw this side of him, this dark, brutal, angry kid, and she warned Batman, rightfully so. So Jason was tracking this lead to find his real birth mother, who was actually being blackmailed by the Joker this whole time. And of course, to get his sticky hands on Robin. Yeah, the Joker had escaped Arkham Asylum and Batman tracked him to Lebanon, where Jason was as well at the same time during his scavenger hunt for his mother. The Joker got his hands on Jason Todd and beat him to death. It's brutal. And then after the Joker's done, he even calls the site a bit messy. So he leaves Jason to die, and of course he sets off a bomb afterwards, just for good luck. Batman arrives far too late after the bomb had gone off, and he held the Boy Wonder's body in his arms, and it's one of the most iconic things you'll see on the cover of any comic book. So afterwards, he comes back as Red Hood to find that he's been replaced after his death by Tim Drake. Now it makes sense. So Batman considers this one of his greatest failures, not properly training Jason as Robin, and I agree. Number 1, Memory Lane. You know it's almost just as bad as being beaten to death and then blown up? It's gonna suck when you gotta go back there or just relive it again. Surprise, here's trauma. Remember this? This takes place in Batman and Robin issue 20, Batman and the Red Hood. So at this point, Jason and Batman are on the way to becoming closer again. The relationship is going well, it's on the up and up. So they head to a foreign country to fight crime. Sounds like another day for the duo. Then upon arrival, Jason Todd realizes that this is Ethiopia, the same place Joker dished out that beating I just talked about. Batman wants Jason to dig into his memories and see if anything comes back, anything that may lead to his resurrection, in order for Bruce to do the same for Damian Wayne. That's brutal. Hey, remember any of this? Any tips? Jason, of course, doesn't react too well at all, and then the two end up splitting again, after, of course, a brutal fight.
Number 10, he became the fattest man on Earth. This bizarre storyline is from 1960, and in it, the evil Gorilla Grodd has transferred his consciousness into human form to confront the Flash. He shoots Flash with a radiation gun that causes his body to absorb excess moisture from the air, making Barry swell up like a water balloon to an alarming and uncomfortable looking size. Not only that, Grodd also erases his memories and sells him to a heartless sideshow owner who puts Barry on display and charges people to come and see the fattest man alive. I can only imagine how cringy it would be to try and read this story today and take it seriously. We get to see a deeply depressed Barry, exploited, embarrassed, and dejected, with little kids pointing and laughing at him. Thankfully, he does eventually recover his memory and his figure. Hey guys, if you like these videos and you want to see more, be sure to take a second and hit that like button. Number 9, his face was disfigured. Not everything on this list is cosmetic, but we'll get into the more emotional suffering later. For now, let's talk about the time Big Sur punched the Flash's lights out. Big Sur is one of the Flash's lesser known villains, but he has some super strength and lands a clean, super powered blow right in Barry's face, and the signature speedster passes out in the bushes at the park. Two kids happen across his body and recoil in horror when they take a peek under his mask. His face is so smashed up it's barely even recognizable. His teeth are chipped, his eyes swollen shut, it's brutal. Seriously hurt, he heads to Gorilla City and gets patched up by his friend Solivar, leader of the super intelligent gorilla race. They heal him up and rebuild his face differently to help keep his identity secret. Luckily, they go with the usual 2 eyes, 1 nose, regular looking face. In the future, advanced surgery helps Flash eventually return to the face that we know and love. Number 8, almost burned to death. In the Flashpoint universe, Barry doesn't have his superpowers, so he works together with Thomas Wayne, that reality's version of Batman, to come up with a scheme to try to get his powers back, so that he can run back in time and fix the timeline. So the plan is simple: recreate the events that originally gave him his powers, by covering himself in chemicals and then getting struck by lightning. Thomas, for good reason, has a lot of concerns, but Barry races ahead with the plan, and it doesn't go well. He is struck by lightning, but instead of receiving powers, he almost roasts to death, getting 3rd-degree burns all over his body. Thomas bandages up what's left of Barry's skin while he screams in agony, and we see Barry lying on a gurney, soaked in blood and covered head to toe in bandages. It is a bit of a gruesome scene and definitely inspires some sympathy for the Flash. Number 7, captured and tortured. In Crisis on Infinite Earths, a lot of things got really cranked up. Many heroes were pushed to their limits, and good old Barry is no exception. The Flash gets captured by the Anti-Monitor, and then mentally tortured by the evil Psycho Pirate, who has the ability to manipulate emotions. Barry endures this for weeks, with Psycho Pirate forcing him to relive his worst memories and emotions over and over again. We see poor Barry cowering in the dark, terrified for his life, forced to watch as his fellow Justice League member Red Tornado is killed right before his eyes. When he finally breaks free, he's been through so much emotional turmoil, he goes buck wild with rage and beats on Psycho Pirate until he begs for mercy. Definitely a low point for the Flash.
Number 6. Teen Titans Academy. So we've got some good news and we got some bad news here. The Teen Titans come together in this possible future to start their own academy to train young heroes and even recruit some of the other non-Titans DC heroes as faculty. Yay! And guess what? We will actually get to explore this future as a reality in the Teen Titans Academy comic series. Bad news? Oh yeah, the bad news. The Academy gets blown apart and tons of their superhero students and staff die during its destruction. Yikes. That's how we set the scene for Future State Teen Titans issue number 1. One of the bleakest states of all the series to come about so far, in my opinion. One of being the keywords there. Number 5, Jace's missing backstory. This is something that has bothered me less as we've got to know Jace, aka Tim Fox, Luke's brother, aka Batman right now. But I also feel like it would have helped a lot of people get on board with our next Batman earlier on in his series if we had sort of found out more. Because Jace is a lesser known character who has a history that in this continuity is almost like unwritten. It's hard for us as readers to connect with who he is as a character. There are little details you can pick up about him as you read, like in Justice League when we learned that he likes to hum his own little soundtrack to himself while fighting, which I loved as a little tidbit. But you really need to dig or just be paying close attention to get those details. After all, that detail didn't even come from his own book, but from a team book that he is featured in, right? I just want to know more about what being Batman means to Jace, why it's important, and I would love some more hints as to how it kind of all came about. But now, the next Batman is done, so I guess hopefully we'll get more of it in another book and we'll get to see more of Jace's Batman, because I did like it. I was just like, give me some reasons that I can, get really connected to the character and like love who they are as a person outside of the persona. Number 4, Amanda Waller's plan. This is a big yikes for me, friends. In Future State Suicide Squad, we're introduced to a whole new squad that seems to be impersonating established heroes, or taking on the role of those mantles legitimately, but not necessarily of their own volition. This is simply because they are a part of Amanda Waller's new version of the Suicide Squad, the Justice Squad. Although a lot of them do actually want to redeem themselves and be good people. And then there is one exception, actually Connor Kent, who seems to be super interested in embodying his role as Waller's Superman. We also find out that the squad are attempting to help Waller in some kind of mysterious mission that she is on. Considering her plan B is to bring back the crime syndicate using the Black Lantern ring, the mission Project Home Base is probably one of the worst ones she has come up with yet, because that's her plan B. To be like, oh, I'll just bring back the crime syndicate and make them do this. Regardless, our heroes, the Justice Squad, have no choice but to follow her lead, die trying or die refusing. Number 3, Wally becomes Famine. If you've been watching our coverage of DC Future State over here, you probably guessed we were going to go to this point. Why is Wally becoming one of the 4 horsemen one of the worst things, you might be wondering? Well, because it's the opposite of what Wally West fans want. People who love Wally West love him because he's just such a good guy. We love Wally for Wally, and the last big events featuring him prominently when he finally did return to us feel like they have been moving him further and further away from the person we all love. Future State was supposed to be a chance to challenge the status quo, and making Wally a villain again, albeit a very remorseful one on the inside from what I've seen, just isn't actually doing that for the character. You're not reinventing him. We've already done that. Personally, I feel like bringing back the whole West family somehow in Future State would be really cool, or just do something completely new with him. Villainous Wally has been done, and a lot of people were not feeling it when it did happen, and so they still aren't. Family Man Wally, that's what I want. Number 2, the timeline. One of the worst things to happen in Future State for most people is this wacky timeline we were thrown into. Nothing is happening in order, and it's kind of hard to tell where in the timeline of Future State you are when you're reading something. I personally find this to be like a kind of fun mystery. I like to piece it together myself, but for many other readers, they find it weird and confusing. And I get that. There is also the problem of the more Future State you read, the more you kind of get the big picture of what's going on in this reality. But if you want to try and understand that without reading everything, good luck to you, because you kind of got to read everything to get the bigger picture. For some, this makes the pseudo event more enjoyable, but for others, not so much. Fortunately, there are some resources out there online if you do need to know the order of everything. But the other worst thing to happen, or not happen really with Future State is that we likely won't know what's being kept as continuity till after the event is done. That's the tricky part of glimpsing into possible futures. Some of them will also become impossible in our current continuity, depending on which path we go down, which also might muddy up the timeline in the long run. Number 1, Raven is free. If you've been following Future State, especially the Teen Titans stuff, you'll know how awful this is. For some context, we learn in Teen Titans Future State issue 2 that Raven ends up defeating the Four Horsemen, one of the biggest bads of the Future State timeline, it would seem, so far anyways. But we also learn that in order to do so, she had to take those entities within herself, meaning that she is now one of the most evil and dangerous beings on the planet. Fortunately, Shazam had a solution, and he ends up taking her to the Rock of Eternity and plans on basically staying there forever in his Shazam form to guard Raven. But, and yes, there's a big but coming, in issue 2 of Shazam, we discover that Necron managed to devise a plot to basically get Raven freed, which honestly means that one of the worst threats we've seen this whole event is now going to be coming to Earth. So everyone better watch out.